All right, welcome everybody. And again, I apologize running late. As you guys know, I say 8 o'clock. That usually means 8-ish, but that's a whole nother story. But welcome once again here as we continue our series here, our conversations with candidates that are running for state office, actually any office, county board, school board, doesn't matter. We've had a lot of great candidates on already so far. We've had Kyle Yudes, Adam Fisher, Orlando Owens, David King. We have Martin Kretzman, who's running for Pierce County Board last week. And we're going to continue this conversation here today for the next 30 to 60 minutes or so. We're going to be bringing on Wisconsin Republican Secretary of State candidate, Jay Schroeder. And I'm really excited about this conversation because this really touches a hot button topic that a lot of people are talking about today, and that's election integrity. And one of the people that can actually do something about it, or at least theoretically, is the Secretary of State. Jay, welcome aboard, sir.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. It's been ridiculous, but we're making it work one way or another.
Sure.
So let me first start off by, we introduced you here. You're actually pretty close to my neck of the woods. I'm in Washera County. You're up in the Neenah area.
Yes.
You've ran for Secretary of State before in the past, and it seems that there's a fixture there at the Secretary of State's office, a gentleman by the name of Doug LaFollette, who seems to have been there forever.
Yes. Well, one of the things you need to know the history of Wisconsin, it was founded in 1848, and the duties for elections were under the Secretary of State's office until Doug LaFollette wandered into the Secretary of State's office. Then the legislature took those duties away because he really couldn't handle them because of his incompetence. Mm-hmm. And even the Democrats realized that because when they were in majority, Democratic governor and legislature, they still didn't give him the duties back. So that's when the duties were taken away. Right. 33 states have it under Secretary of State's office. Wisconsin doesn't. And we have this thing called the Wisconsin Election Commission. It used to be called the GAB, Government Accountability Board. All they did is change 3 letters, GAB to WEC, kept all the personnel.
Well, and that's something interesting because when they took those powers away, what exactly did they leave for the Secretary of State to be doing other than affixing a seal, publishing a law? What else was there really for the Secretary to do?
He serves on the Board of Public Lands, which meets once a month, and they, meet and discuss any other lands that the state could purchase for parks and things like that. But he literally has nothing to do. If you've checked my Facebook page, you've seen first of all, he's in the basement of the Capitol. And then I went down there, and if you look at my Facebook page, it's like a skit out of Saturday Night Live. You go around the corner, and there you see inside the door, it's all full of junk.
Right.
The only thing I should have done is call the fire marshal when I was there. It's full of junk. And then the lady comes around the corner, and I said, "Oh, Mr. LaFollette in?" "Oh, no, he's on vacation this week." And then I said, "Oh, how about next week?" "Well, we don't know. He doesn't come in too often because of COVID. He works out of his house."
Oh.
The door's locked. There's a plastic sheet over the window, and there's a little place you need to bend down so you talk through it. It's incredible.
So not too much in terms of access to transparency there, I see.
Yeah, just an understatement.
Well, and that's kind of been the hot button topic, and we might as well jump right into it because when you think about transparency, when you think about, accessibility, one only need go back to the 2020 election. And the hot button there is, election integrity. Obviously, we got a lot of really good people running for governor. We have lieutenant governor candidates. There's a ton of them out there. And you hear a lot of people talking about election integrity. You've heard people talking about the election was stolen. Some people are looking at it from another point of view. From my perspective, no matter how I look at this, we need to have election integrity. We need an audit. We need to prevent what happened, on election day of 2020, where all of a sudden all these ballots come in the middle of the night. You've talked about election integrity at length. Kind of walk somebody through this that say isn't politically initiated, isn't politically aware of these things.
Well, when I go to caucuses or Lincoln Day dinners, sometimes the people's eyes are glazed over, and I say to them, "How many times have you heard tonight from different candidates election integrity?" And they shake their heads, yes. Well, but nobody has solutions. We can just use the buzzword, but the solutions are, which people have told me by going around the state, is you got to get rid of voting machines, drop boxes, which the Supreme Court now has ruled 4-3 that they can't be allowed, and you have to have IDs for everyone that votes, whether it's at the polling place, whether it's absentee ballot, but they have to have IDs. Now, those are election integrity making it work. Otherwise, it's just talk, because a year from now, 5 years, 50 years from now, nothing will change. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expect different results.
That is absolutely true. Now, when you say get rid of voting machines, what exactly, how do you, I guess, when I always got into the ballot box, I, go to my thing, I punch in the things, and with new tech, obviously, you get the little pad and then it prints out a sheet. Are you saying like literally getting rid of those type of things and go back to pen and paper, or what exactly how do you define getting rid of the voting machines?
Well, touchscreen voting machines. The scariest thing that happened this week that is just mind-boggling is the Durham report said that candidate Donald Trump was hacked when he was a candidate, which is bad enough. But the most scariest thing is his server in the executive residence of the White House was hacked. Now, if someone can hack that, the Russians and the Chinese can as well.
Yes.
So any machine that has the ability to be hacked has to be stopped for voting purposes. And the reason is because of what happened to Donald Trump in the White House. So any machine that can be hacked or accessed by a computer has to be eliminated. And paper ballots, and someone had said, well, do you realize when you have an election in November why they're not certified until January? It is to count ballots.
Right.
As one of the many reasons. So will we know on election night the results? Maybe not. But I'll tell you what, if you do all those things, which are not rocket science, you will have people that trust what the votes are. I was at the rally yesterday in the Capitol, and one of the thing that I kept saying is domestic tranquility. Do we have that now?
Far from it.
When we have, that's exactly the scariest point. We have 625,000 people on the voting rolls that are deceased. 4,900 people that are 124 years old and older.
You got to watch out for them 120-year-old plus folks, man. Those are the most shady characters out there.
Yeah, and they're probably in nursing homes, and then not having special voting deputies help them out. Because one of the things that was in the nursing home, they were asked, and they signed an affidavit that I heard Justice Gableman say, is they asked, well, what were you actually doing? And they said, well, what we do is put the resident in front of the TV for an hour or two, and then we give them a ballot. You can't make this stuff up. It is just incredible. The whole thing is the issue. Everyone talks about it. But what the Waukesha County judge said encapsulates it in one sentence. When you have drop boxes that are illegal, there is illegal votes that negate legally cast votes.
Correct.
That's what this is all about.
But I think the issue I've always had with the drop boxes in particular was that when we look at an election day, and the Constitution clearly prescribes what that is, it doesn't, you make exceptions for absentee ballots. I understand that. Military members are the people that, may not be there for work-related reasons or any number of other things. But this idea of early voting, drop boxes, everything else like that, it just doesn't feel right, because again, it just screams unconstitutional. We have a set day for voting. How do you justify this and break this chain of custody as it relates to voting? It doesn't make sense at all.
No. And it always gets I always think of what Justice Scalia said. If you have a constitution and you don't like it, he was referring to the Second Amendment.
Mhm.
There's a process to change it. If you have state statutes in Wisconsin, you don't like it, drop boxes, whatever, change the statute. Don't wave a magic wand like the Wisconsin Election Commission says, well, we're just going to do it. And the worst part of it is, and you look to encapsulate certain things, one of the members said during a meeting, which was one of the reasons that was charges were referred to from Racine Sheriff, Dean Knutson, who is the appointee of Robin Voss,
Mhm.
and he can remove him at any time. He's an at-will appointee.
Right.
Anyway, what he said when they were talking about drop boxes and absentee, he said, when do we have to start following the law again?
Right. Well, and that brings up an interesting thing, because between talking about the drop boxes and changes in voting laws and, or interpretations, or as he said, when do we have to start following the law again? I get it to a certain point. We're talking, a lot of these conversations happen in the summer of 2020, and there was a lot of people that were scared. COVID was going around. It's a novel virus. The media made it look like everybody was dropping off all over the place, and it was terrible. And if anybody has lost somebody, horrible, no doubt about that.
Yes.
The problem was, though, is that these are legislators and people working within government that should have known better, that just because there is a pandemic going on, you don't just push aside the laws, because the moment you do that, now you're looking, if we were to go along with that line of thinking, we would be dealing more with societal collapse. If you're talking airborne Ebola, yes, I get it. At that point, societal collapse, it's a whole nother story. But we weren't dealing with that. So how do we stop this? Ian C. Jordan, who's in our chat room here, he asked the question, how do we fix that?
How do you fix it? Well, you have to fire the WEC and first of all make an example out of Dean Knutson and get it down into the public more of what's going on. Now, when I started this, calling for this about 6-7 months ago, I didn't hear right away from one candidate or running for governor. But now all three major ones that are running want to get rid of the Wisconsin Election Commission.
Correct.
And one even said last week it needs to be destroyed, which I was like, well, that's a different phrase. But they all agree with it now that it has to be dissolved. It's as I talk around, and I go to the organization and I posted, hey, if a Democrat group wants me to speak on it, I will. That is no matter the party. But like Justice Gable, when I talked to him, he says the WEC is irredeemable, which is a good way to encapsulate it. So,
well, you're one of your primary opponents there, Amy Laudenbach, and I've not had the opportunity to speak with her at this point, but I was looking at an article here, and she was talking about wanting to essentially, I guess, be in control of W. That's kind of the stance that she's taking on that. How does that make it any better?
Well, I have her flyer, and somebody pointed it out to me. She said she wants to be a check on WEC.
Yes.
What does that mean? A check. She would have no veto authority. They still have all the personnel, so nothing would happen. And the thing is, which I've just posted on my Facebook page, she did a newspaper interview, and like I said, I've posted that on Facebook and Twitter. She said she didn't believe there was any major irregularities in the 2020.
Well, that is probably one of the biggest questions as it relates to what happened in 2020. Was there enough election irregularities between the voting machines and the ballots being dropped off in the middle of the night and any number of things, voter rolls, and I definitely want to get to that here in a moment. Was there enough to have turned the election? I'm of the belief that I think that considering everything that happened in 2020, the mainstream media really pumped up a lot of information to people that are just the average everyday person. and they were just told orange man bad. And I think they were loaded against Trump, not so much for Biden. But that doesn't account for all the irregularities. Because I remember there was, I want to say it was Rock County, but there was a county that had this big flip because apparently the voting machines had taken all of Trump's votes and put it all into Biden's column. And one of the candidates said, hey, this is kind of weird because normally we're in like the high 60s, low 70s as far as Republican turnout. How does that work? And that's what kind of put the big flag up there on that. So if we're not willing to take a look to see what happened during 2020, that makes a lot of people lose confidence in anything going forward. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now.
Ironically, that's where Amy Loudenbach lives, is in Rock County. Now, if she's in the legislature and you have an issue being brought up and you have some power in the legislature, wouldn't you want to further check into that if that was your county?
Well, especially something that makes, statewide news, and then eventually national.
Right. But what you state is so interesting. But the question I always say is why? Why wouldn't you want an audit? Now, if you think there's nothing to be found, let them go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Because then it's going to show nothing. Or like some guy told me, well, if they do it and audit doesn't show it, they'll look foolish. Why would you fight it all the time? That's the question I just can't get past.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I've asked that question to many of my listeners because it's like, if I won an election, let's say you and I were running and you wanted to let's audit this election. I'd pay for it myself. Like, I would be so confident in my victory. I would want you to know how bad I beat you. Because that's what they're claiming. They had a mandate. I want you to know that I came in, I saw, I conquered. That's what I would want you to know. Yeah. But every time they push back against it, it leads more to the fire. Like, okay, you're hiding something.
Yes. The national newspaper called me and they wanted to know, well, why do you keep pushing this? Why do you keep pushing? Why do you want an audit? Why? And I said, you know what? This is a statute and a way to find out. I said, if Hillary Clinton wanted an audit in 2016, just like a forensic audit, when Donald Trump beat her, I'd say, hey, more power to you, go for it.
Right.
And if she thought she won, she should have done it. But if we as Republicans want to do it, go ahead and do it. I don't care what party it is, because you'll find the result. And then it will lead, like I said, in the domestic tranquility. That is not around right now.
Well, we're so bifurcated as a nation and even as a state. And I think a lot of it, there's a lot of hyperpartisanship that just in tribalism that has really entrenched itself. It's either my way or you're wrong. We're the good guys, you're the bad guys. There's a lot of that, and I think, for the average ordinary person, the person who doesn't really follow politics, the person that just wants to work, come home, live their best life, I think for those people, they want to understand what's going on, but they don't want to be part of that tribalism, and they feel like they're getting caught in the crossfire because how do you understand this when a lot of these issues are so incredibly complex? So how would you address folks like that?
I would tell them to go to a gas station and look at the price of gas. You compare that to now to 12 months. That is one thing like my daughter can relate to, because she said, you think Trump's going to run or not? Because she's 19 years old, and you know that mindset of a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I think he's going to. And she said right away, well, he's going to win. And I said, why do you say that? And she says, it's because of the price of gas.
Go ahead, sir.
It encapsulates everything. Inflation, it's gas. And the thing is, it shows when the Democrats are completely in control what they can do or destroy, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you probably watched Tony Evers last night, his State of the State address.
Yeah, some I could only take so much.
It was painful. It was painful. My drink needed a drink. It was that rough. Somebody asked me, it's like, why would you do that to yourself? I'm like, I'm doing it for you. I'm trying to help you out. But as I'm watching him, he's talking about inflation, and I think that's a great point, because I don't think it matters what office you're running for right now. The idea of inflation is a huge issue. Like you said, take a look at the gas pump. Worse yet, go to the grocery store. I'm kind of mad right now because I got to spend $1 more for a pound of butter that I was paying $2 for last year. And let's not even get into meat and everything else. Which goes back to the idea, and I know people hate it when you quote Obama, but let's just be honest. When you say something right, it's great. Elections have consequences. And if we can't have integrity in our election process, if we can't have people that have confidence, because right now a lot of people just don't have that, and I think in order to restore that, we definitely got to work together between Secretary of State, the governor, legislative bodies. How would you get people to work together to help restore those powers to the Secretary of State?
Well, you briefly have to go to when the state was founded, 1848, and then La Follette get in and screwed it up. But that's why I have to run for this office crystal clear of my platform. I want to fire the WEC, and as one governor candidate has said, destroy it. So then if I get in office, I can go to the legislature and the governor and say, well, my platform is crystal clear here. Mm-hmm. The people supported me, voted for me. Let's get this done. And I've told some legislators, hey, make me the fall guy. That's fine. Give me the power to do it, and I'll clean it up. And I've kind of joked, when we had Act 10, there was 100,000 protesters.
Right.
I said, if I get elected Secretary of State, my goal is to have 30,000 at the Capitol.
See, that's good. Up the ante there. There's nothing wrong with that. Not today.
Right.
What's the feeling that you've gotten from just talking to people, going to caucuses, Lincoln Day dinners, patriot groups? What's the feeling that you've gotten from people, in your race with regards to the election integrity topic and just the overall sentiment?
My biggest applause line and support when I talk to people is when I say the WEC needs to be fired. Mm-hmm. That is the thing. 80% of people want that.
Yeah.
At least maybe 90. But they see what's going on, and these people are really have the pulse of what's going on. When I go to those, I always say everyone has influence at 10. So when there's 50 people when I talk, there's 500, 5,000, 50,000, 500,000. We have the ability to win this election just with the people in this room. And the reason is Virginia. Biden won by 10 points. Youngkin flipped it to 4. And there was college Republican groups in Waukesha calling to Virginia to get the word out and the message. And because they did that, and everybody, that's how it flipped. We only have to flip a half a point.
Right.
So if you look at the big picture, and it's getting the truth out. I tell the people, because sometimes they're glum and hear, dire things, and it almost reminds me of Eeyore. And I'm like, no, we're in the majority here. Our only challenge is to get the truth out. If we get that out, we will win. And one example, when you got the truth, Matt Walker with the daggers. I don't know feel about him either way, but he was going to get thrown out of office in the recall. Mm-hmm. But people worked their butts off to get the truth out what was going on, and he survived it.
Yep.
So that's the challenge.
I think that's a great point that you bring up, is the idea of that sphere of influence when you talk to people. One of the big reasons I want to carry on these conversations with folks is because there's a lot of people that have tuned out. They don't watch mainstream media. They don't watch TV at all. Like if you're like me, I don't have cable or satellite. I just have the internet. Some people don't have time to listen to AM, FM radio. I don't know anybody who reads a newspaper anymore. That's obsolete. But a lot of people get their information online. A lot of people get and unfortunately, they also only read the headlines. But when we put out a conversation like this, now people watch Now people listen. And then, of course, person talks to another, and you start getting this compounding effect. And that's really why I want to get these conversations out so we can see the person behind, who's running for this office. Like, the biggest question that I get people asked is like, why would you put yourself through that? Like, you're putting yourself out there in the public eye. So I'll throw that to you. Why would you put yourself into this wonderful maelstrom that we're calling election 2022?
Because it's so corrupt and so wrong. I drove to Sawyer County this last weekend, Saturday. I drove 600 miles. I went to Sawyer County. Believe me, the people in that area in northern Wisconsin, they get it.
Mm-hmm.
Drove home, and it was 16 below zero up there.
Yep.
And then I went into a fishtail and almost hit a car and put my van in the ditch. But to answer your question is because it's so screwed up and it's so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, hey, people in the military go and fight and they can die for it. They get their limbs blown off. And we all know what the heck is going on in this state and country. We can't do this.
Right.
When people fly around the world, try to save us. So that's why I do it. And it's just so freaking corrupt and crooked. And that's what motivates me to do it. It just does.
Well, and I think we're all at this point, and I know you're a father of children. I have children, and we're really at this point now where if we don't stand up, then this is going to be our kids' battle to fight. And I don't know, maybe I'm a softie at heart, but I really don't want my kids having to have this fight. I'd rather be the one taking it up for them. So that's why when I get the opportunity to talk to patriots like yourselves and others, I relish in this. It's a pleasure, it's a joy, it's an honor. So yeah, I definitely am in agreement with you on that. I want to ask you this here, something on your campaign page. One of the first things you notice when you look on there, it says, Jay Schroeder, he's a American first candidate. Talk to me about that, because I personally, I love that America first philosophy. What does that mean to you?
Well, it encapsulates what President used to say. Joe Biden was America last. We have to lead and show, and we mean business. Do you actually think anyone would believe that Russia would be ready to invade Ukraine if Donald Trump was president? I doubt it. But America first, that's what it means. Or it means Wisconsin first. It means democracy first. It means the individual first. Not Robin Voss, not the legislature. It's the citizens come first. We're the boss.
Right.
I've heard one of the things, in Waupaca County, you had a legislator there, and he was trying to tell the people caucus that they have it wrong.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. The roles are reversed now. So we're the boss, and you peasants that vote, you need to listen because we know what's best. Well, arrogance.
It is arrogance. It is hubris. And I think this is one of those things where, and maybe it's a pipe dream, the idea of term limits. Because you have individuals that have been in office, 10, 12, 40 years. At what point did you stop being a citizen legislator? You know what I mean? Because the concept by the founders was that, Joe Shoemaker over there was going to run for office. He'll be in there for a couple terms and he'll go back to making shoes. That simple. But we got people make careers out of this.
The one thing any of the listeners, go back in your mind to when someone first ran for office, how they were, what they said. And now fast forward 10, 15 years and see, have those people changed? And the overwhelming answer, I would say, is yes. Mm-hmm. Which shows that you get, I was in Menominee City Council and I was in the town of Menasha board. It's called groupthink.
Yes.
You've got these administrators, you've got all these department heads, and you need to feel liked and wanted, and they're all saying, yes, yes, do this, do this, do this. And then you're like, well, I can't be the thorn here. We got all these people, and they must be right. We've got all these educated people telling us that we need to be doing this. So then, as the time goes on, I know an assemblyman, I'm not going to mention who it was.
Yeah.
When he first got elected, he was a firebrand, just a firebrand. And the longer he gets in, the more it's just like becomes quiet. And for the life of me, I don't understand it. Because I've told a couple, okay, a legislator, you make 50,000, right? You could go deliver Amazon and work your butt off and make the same.
You really could. Yeah.
Why are they doing it? You know?
Well, I think a lot of it is some people get addicted to the influence. They get addicted to the perception of power. And I think, when you, and we see not only the state, but national level, you'll see an individual that will capitulate to the mainstream media, to the left, because they want to be, like you said, liked. They think for some reason that the other side is going to embrace them. And I think, unfortunately, they come to find out that's not the case. Great example, John McCain, when he was running in 08, remember, he was the maverick and everything. But boy, they eviscerated him against Obama. So that was kind of an interesting turn of events, because they moved very quick on that.
Yeah, like Donald Trump has said, people run for office for two reasons. They either want the money or the prestige. The unique thing about him is he had both before he ran.
Right.
So when he got in there, and plus to do fundraisers for Schumer and the Democrats, they thought he was one of them. And then when he started governing like a conservative Republican, it just blew their mind. And he had fame and fortune beforehand. So he didn't need that. And like he said, they're going to have 4 years or 8 years, but I have to do things fast and we have to clean it up. And that's why he did what he did. But that's why they're so incensed with him, because they thought he was one of them.
Well, no, it's funny. My wife made this observation, into Trump's presidency the first couple of years. And this is with all the obstruction, all the accusations of, Russia. She said that, look at everything that Trump has done in the first 2 years, and then look at what the last 3 presidents have done. Were they even trying? And I think, when we take a look at what, the grassroots base of the Republican Party, the conservative movement are looking for, they're looking for that person that's just full steam ahead. Let's get work done. I think they're done with the empty platitudes and stump speeches. They want you to say what you're going to say and then put the work in once you're in office.
Yes. Like President Trump used to say, he wanted to move the capital to Jerusalem. Every president, like he would say, they want to do it. And then when they get elected, nothing happens. But when he ran, he said, yeah, I'll do it. And then when he did it, the world leaders called him and said, you can't do this. And he said, well, I just didn't take their phone calls. and I just did it. And they were told him, oh, this is going to happen. Well, you know what? It never did. So that's a classic example of just leading.
And I think that's what we really want to see here, from people. Real quick here, if you guys take a look here, right there on the very bottom, you're going to see Jay's his website there. Make sure you guys check that out. And I always do this whenever I have candidates on here, because I know how hard this can be when you're going out there. You got to ask for donations. So if you guys are looking for a candidate and Jay is your candidate, make sure you hit that link. Make sure read about him, learn about him, and of course, donate if at all possible. So always got to bring that up, just because I know that as we go into this primary season, it's going to get really ridiculous, and people need money to stay in the race because gas ain't free.
That's right. Yes, Schroeder for SecretaryOfState.com. The other thing I'm going to be putting up, because we can get nomination signatures from April 15th to June 1st.
Yes.
Let me tell you, if I want to fire the Wisconsin Election Commission, you think they're going to watch and look at every name to make sure every I is dotted and T crossed? Because the minimum is 2,000 signatures, but I need to turn in 4,000. And that's where I need everyone's help. I can't do it myself.
Well, that brings up a good point, and I know you've talked on this issue too. The idea of cleaning up the voter rolls. My wife used to, at one point, she was a county deputy clerk, and that was a huge issue. And this was 7-8 years ago. What's stopping people from cleaning up, get the dead off the voter rolls, get the people that have moved out of that jurisdiction off the voter rolls? What's so difficult about this?
The Wisconsin elections response to that is, well, we need it for historical reasons. What the heck does that mean? Put it on a disc somewhere.
Yeah, get a journal, do something.
Yeah, unless they fight it and it's went to court and they try to do it. It gets back to the three-letter word again, is why. Why wouldn't you clean it up? 625,000 people are deceased on the voting rolls. 9,400, I believe, are 124 years old and older. That stuff is and anyone that knows all that, as I've said, they need to be fired because they don't know what their job is. And the job is to have clean voting rolls, IDs for everyone that votes, whether it's absentee, same day, whatever. You got to have an ID, or you're contacted. If you don't have an ID, you have 14 days to cure it. If you don't, sorry. You have to have watermark ballots and have them differentiated between on-day or in-person voting on election day versus absentee. So things are going to have to be tracked because they've used this system and played it.
Right. And
Obama's Eric Holder has said it. Remember this on everything that goes on in the elections. And his famous quote is, "A crisis is a terrible thing to waste."
Oh, yes.
And they live that everything that they do.
Yeah. Eric Holder took advantage of that. Who was that? Rahm Emanuel took advantage of that. Of course, Hillary takes advantage of that. I mean, everybody's taking advantage of that from top on down. When we take a look at some of the voter issues that we've seen here in Wisconsin, especially when you look at things like voting in the park, ballot harvesting, those are other hot topics here. Go ahead, please.
Go ahead. The one thing is, everyone's heard how Zuckerberg came in, and it took over Brown County and it's 5 counties. You have to have, you want to clean up election integrity, you have to have fines for that. Okay, if he spends, in the statutes, you can't do it. If he spends like $5 million, I don't know, you'd have a fine of 7 or 10 times what was spent.
Right.
But for him, who cares? He's worth $100 billion. The way you address that and put an end to it is they have prison time if they do it. That's an assault on democracy. And when you do that, you should serve some time. Now that will get their attention.
Well, that goes back to the Racine County issue there with the sheriff's department. They laid out their case. It took them roughly about 11 months to investigate. You have the report. They had I think a lot of people watched it. I know I watched it.
Yes.
And now we're hearing that the Racine County DA is not going to prosecute due to jurisdiction.
Yeah. Well, I heard that and I'm like, okay, is this all just a delay tactic and a shiny object? So what does that mean? If I'm in a different county and I go 100 miles an hour in a 50-mile speed zone, because I don't live there, I'm not going to get prosecuted. My question is, okay, so is there ability for the Racine sheriff to refer it to each county where these Wisconsin Election Commission members live? Come on, we can do this.
Right.
We're not that stupid. So that's what should be done now, the next step.
Oh, what about the people that were, going into the nursing homes, sitting these people down and having them watch an hour worth of television? And maybe it's just me, but it kind of really upsets me because it's like, okay, you're abusing elderly folks. I mean, people that are senile, people that have, that are end of life, that may not be fully cognizant, and you're playing this up for a political end. I mean, to me, that's despicable.
Yes, having my grandmother in a nursing home and my parents at the end of their lives, they were there, and that would have happened to me, I would have went ballistic. It was,
right.
Yeah, it's the worst thing is taking advantage of someone elderly. That's how low can you go,
Exactly. So ultimately, I guess, is this something that's going to just kind of dissipate and go away, or what do you where do you see that going there? Because somebody's got to have jurisdiction over this. Obviously, we know that a crime had been committed. I'd
Well,
love to see something happening.
Shouldn't the Racine sheriff refer it to the DAs where these election commission members live?
Mm.
You know, that's the answer, I think. You know, if somebody does a crime, you know, in a different, well, what does that mean now? And if you, we're not going to do anything because where it happened, we're not going to, they don't live. Is that what we're going to do now on things?
I commit a crime in Oshkosh, they're not going to prosecute me because I live in Washera. And it's like,
that's
no,
right.
pretty sure they'd find a way to get me.
Yeah, well, that's the process they have to use the same way to prosecute those election commission members that violated state statute and Wisconsin Election Commission employees. See, you know, come on. Like I said, what a shiny object. Oh, we can't prosecute them. They don't live in Racine County. Yeah. And I haven't heard anybody say what I'm saying. Like, okay, where do they live? What county? Right. Have you heard any? I haven't heard anybody say that.
Not a one. Not a one. Here's an interesting comment. So Republicans who went to nursing homes were not going to nursing homes due to the pandemic. I didn't know Republicans were even entertaining that idea. That would have been interesting to know.
Yeah, that's.
But I don't
really. So it depends on the party. Is that what they're trying to say?
Not sure. I'm sure she can give us clarification on that, though. So
yeah, I know Dylan. So yes,
Darlene's awesome. I love her.
Yeah.
I've had many chances to talk to her, and I'm hoping that it's a lot of people I'd like to meet in person that I have not met yet, but will in time. Ultimately, end of the day, here in Wisconsin, I think obviously GAB, WEC, like you said, it's the same thing, just different acronym. If the Secretary of State gets those powers back, what do we necessarily do? We replace the WEC? Do we have it under the purview of the Secretary of State with an advising body? How do you envision something like that?
Well, I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you what, if you have the authority, what you would do is contact, and I've talked to a few Secretary of States, of course, in different states, to see what do they have, what works, what doesn't work. You know, like Florida and Gore, they had hanging chads and all that. What did they do to get rid of that rectifier? So each state's supposed to be like a petri dish for the nation. So that's what I would do, is contact them. And you have to, of course, get as close as possible, non-biased, to help and structure it. But those things that I've laid out already is voting machines that have no ability to have internet connection, watermark ballots. That doesn't take a $10 million budget like the WEC has now.
Right.
And get the Secretary of State's office out of Dane County. Put it in the middle of the state, maybe a Sheriff County. You could come and visit me every day.
Hey, I'd be game with that. I got a couple bars to hit up for, for lunch. You know, one of the things I love about rural Wisconsin is that you actually get better food at a bar than you do at most restaurants. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, they're good cooks. That's right.
I love this place. But no, and it's funny because Mark Belling wrote an article about this, I believe, sometime last year, talking about, RPW getting out of Madison. And I love that idea that you're talking about here because it reflects that as well. There's so much that just needs to leave Madison. Get out of that toxic bubble that is, I've heard people call it the Berkeley of the Midwest. And I don't mean that as a compliment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Get into, it's like Lee Dreyfus, the former Republican governor. Madison is 23 miles surrounded by reality. So we have to get the reality back to state government. And, they won't want it because all these people that live there, the liberals, they like that Madison. There's a reason they don't want to move out of Madison, the state government, of course. But the further north you go, the people get it, let me tell you.
And I can attest to that. In 2014, we were prior to that, we were living down in the Milwaukee area, West Dallas in particular. And in 2014, my mother-in-law, she fell ill, and ultimately she passed away. But we made the decision to get out of the Milwaukee area. Crime was going up. You kind of saw the writing on the wall. Things weren't looking really good. So we moved out, took a leap of faith, moved up here. And I'll tell you, it is fascinating because I can go back 10, 12 years and say, why would anybody leave the metro Milwaukee area? Why? Now that I've left, I ask, why would you go back? Like the reality of what we see here from everyday people is it's amazing, it's humbling, it's great to be a part of. And I think that if more people got out of the Wow County, Milwaukee area, Madison area, they would know there's more to Wisconsin than just what you see down there in those bubbles.
Yes, the thing is, where you have democratic rule, you have more crime, you have more deterioration of housing, you name it. And they claim to be helping the poor people, and the people, they're hurting them. It's like modern day enslavement.
Mhm.
The poor people and the Democrats, they're the snake oil salesmen is what they are, and they end up hurting the people. But with Milwaukee, you got to remember Henry Meyer, the mayor of Milwaukee, was it over 100 years ago?
Yes.
He was a socialist.
Yeah.
So that you have that foundation for 100 years. But I would hope at some point the people actually will get what's going on to them. They're hurting them. The Democrats claim they're helping them. It's a shame too, because they just use them like Trump used to say with African American people. What the hell you got to lose? You got a Democrat and beats his drum. Vote for me, vote for me. You don't hear a thing. He doesn't do a thing for you. 4 years later, they come back and ask for your vote again. It really is a shame.
Well, and it's even worse when I don't know if you ever seen those candid videos where somebody's talking to like a college student or somebody, man on the street type of thing, and they'll ask, like, say, a white kid at a university, and they'll tell you, like, well, they don't have access to IDs, and then they go to like a black guy in the city. It's like, no, I know where the DMV is, right over there. Take the number 11, go down, take a left. Yeah, no, I got my ID right here. Like I've never known nobody who's ever left their house without an ID. Not a soul. So
Right.
it's the subtle racism of the left is what it is.
Absolutely. And the ID voting gets back to the thing I keep saying over and over again is why would you fight someone having an ID
Right.
to vote? We both know the answer to that. It's easier for fraud if you don't have an ID. Otherwise, it's always the question of why. Why doesn't somebody do this? It's like the old, it just doesn't pass the smell test,
Right. It's amazing, and it just keeps going. But hopefully, if we get the right people in offices, we'll be able to put this to a stop. I mean, at least we can hope.
Absolutely, pedal to the metal. And these are going to be voter suppression things. I know that's the drumbeat will be voter suppression. But the thing is that Institute for Reforming Government did a poll. I don't know if you saw that.
Not yet.
I posted it on my website. Do you know the Democrats want to have the Secretary of State in charge of elections as well?
Of course, that would make sense because whoever's in power will have the influence.
Well, the thing is, I've been asked that. Okay, Schroeder, you run for Secretary of State. What happens in 4 years? You screw up or you get defeated. And I thought about that. And the answer is, whoever is in charge of the legislature is closest to people. That's the way it's always been designed.
Mm-hmm.
So what you would do is you would have the duties for the Secretary of State sunset at the end of the term. So if I don't work hard and do a good job, then I lose the duties, even if I get reelected. Wow. And whoever runs for Secretary of State again 4 years later, me or whoever, has to reapply to the legislature to have those duties. So there's always that check in maintaining performance. If you don't perform, you should be fired or your duties taken away. I have no problem with that.
Well, and you don't hear too many people talk about doing something like that, put a sunset clause on their abilities or, set in terms like that, because it's always, just throw more at me or let me do whatever. Let me add a tax. I think the last time I heard anything about a sunset clause in this area was, what was that? Miller Park or whatever it's called today.
Yeah, their tax the sales tax.
Yeah. That's the last time I recall hearing anything about a sunset clause. Everything's just been continuous.
Yeah. So that's how you handle it or deal with it. You perform or you lose it or you get fired. That's what it is in the real world.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of where I think a lot of people, they especially a lot of incumbents, there's this belief that the certain seats, they're theirs. We've been there forever and nobody's going to vote us out. And it's kind of funny because I could be in my job for 10, 20 years, but I slip up one time, I'm pounding sand and handing out resumes. It is kind of baffling that anybody would have that kind of blasé attitude that seat is somehow theirs.
Yep.
So,
that's right.
So, I'm sure you got a lot of events coming up. Kind of, throw out like some of the events you got coming up here going into February, going into March. And of course, we got your contact information there on the bottom as we wrap this up here.
Sure. Friday night is Milwaukee County Lincoln Day dinner, and Saturday morning is their caucus. Walker caucus is on Saturday. The following week is St. Croix in Monroe County. I used to be in the mortgage business, and I drove all over the state and refinanced people's mortgages. I always kept track because I'm a numbers geek, but I drove 1.5 million miles in the mortgage business. And what I'm doing right now, going around the state talking to caucuses and Lincoln Day, it's the same thing. But these things are so important. I come in and there's always surprise some speakers ahead of me, but I always bring in a blank sheet of paper. I have no idea what I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. But then as they talk, I just write down 5 or 6 points, and then I speak on them. But they're easy and they're crystal clear. We have to do it now. And the old politicians saying, "Oh, this is the most important election." Well, this one is, because if we don't clean it up, it will be lost. And it can't be. We deserve better. I always said we deserve better in Wisconsin. The United States, we're better than that. We're good people. Mm-hmm. We're in the majority. These AOC types, they're probably 23% of the country. But we can't believe the lies from the media, like they're majority and who are we? We should just sit down and shut up because we're in the minority, and don't you understand that? The big thing is they did an overreach because they thought they were in the majority, Pelosi and all that crew. And they're like, okay, we're going to change America. Well, she even said that in Biden, fundamentally change. But they didn't realize that there is someone, or 2 of them, which Sinema out of Arizona is just a complete miracle, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and Manchin too. But they even thought, hey, this is going too far, and you people are overreaching, and that isn't what our country is. And Manchin mentioned what you did, that he has children and grandchildren. He's like, I can't let this happen.
Right.
So then he stopped it. So, but there is hope, and we're positive, and we will win. We'll clean house. But the thing is, when we're clean house, we have to lead and get things done, and not just talk about it, because don't get done in, like Rush Limbaugh used to say, to get invited to all the cocktail parties. That's why some people change, and that's their goal. But we have to do it. None of this is difficult. It really isn't. Mm-hmm. But you have the will to do it. But I can't do it myself. I need help with donations, and I need help with those nomination papers. I can't stress that enough.
Well, we'll make sure, we'll put that information out. So anytime you have that information, let us know, and we can definitely repost it, put stuff out there. Because I want to make sure that we do what we can to get this information out to people, especially people that, like I said, they don't follow mainstream media, AM, FM, newspapers, none of that stuff. But if you're getting your information online, we want to be able to get that information there. So, Jay, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. I am really, really looking forward to seeing what you got coming up. You're going to be there at the Link Dinner this Friday. Is that correct, sir?
Yes. Yes.
I hope I will meet you there. I got invited down there, and I'm hoping to, meet folks in person. And I know a couple of folks personally, but I want to know more. Actually get to shake the people's hands.
Yep. One thing I'll leave you with, which I always say at the end when I meet with people. You remember Judge's last name in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sure you do. And what was it?
It was Schroeder.
Schroeder.
Excuse me.
Yep. And his name was Schroeder, and so is mine, and we all mean business.
Yeah. If you pay attention to what he was like, yeah, he kind of threw the hammer down a few times.
Yeah, that's right. So we're Germans, and we mean business.
Out. Well, I look forward to seeing more of what you guys on there. Keep us abreast of everything you have, and as always, I want to thank you for
papers
this
on my website. I'll have my nomination papers on my website. It will be April 15th to June 1st, but I can't stress enough how much I need this. The WEC sees me as the enemy, obviously.
Well, if you're making enemies at WEC, I can't see where there's a problem there. I think that's a good thing. You know. So I definitely want to extend the invite. Anytime you want to come back on here, we want to do a special show, get more information out. You are always welcome here, sir.
Awesome. I appreciate your time and getting the word out. That's what it's all about. You do an excellent service.
I'm going to do what I can here. So, all right, awesome. Sir, we're going to wrap her up. So thank you very much.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Yep. Bye.
All right, guys. That was Jay Schroeder here. He's running for Secretary of State here in the great state of Wisconsin. And tell me, what do you guys think? What was your thought process on all this? Because I personally liked a lot of what he said. And I think he's right. Because if you look at things like, for example, why do we have voting machines that have any type of internet connectivity? That is absurd. WEC, GAB, tomato, X, Y, and Z. Why isn't this back with the Secretary of State? Well, I get it. Doug LaFollette wasn't doing his thing, but you know what? Now it's time to get somebody else in there, somebody that actually means business, somebody that's actually working for the people. So I'm liking a lot of what he's saying right here. So I want to thank you guys all here for joining here tonight. Obviously, we got the link down there. Let's see. Sandra, thank you for having Jay on. Of course. And anytime he's welcome on here. But yes, we're going to be rebroadcasting this, of course, on Rumble, BitChute. It'll be up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your favorite podcast from, whatever distributing platform, all that goodness. So next week, I'm sure we're going to be lining up a few other candidates coming up here. And I want to thank you guys all for checking in, participating in the chat. I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate your time. Good night. God bless you. God bless Wisconsin. God bless the USA. I'm out.